Man vanishes in the woods. Years later, his car reappears, with a dark twist. The forest whispered secrets Michael Carter would never share. Just 2 nights, Spuddy. I'll be back before you know it. Michael ruffled his son's hair, memorizing the way Ethan's eyes, mirror images of his own, crinkled when he smiled. The 8-year-old's fingers clutched a small wooden truck Michael had carved for him last Christmas. Promise? Ethan asked, his small voice carrying the weight that only children can muster when extracting solemn oaths from adults. Cross my heart. Michael made the gesture over his chest, then pressed a kiss to his son's forehead. You be good for Mom. I just need some time with the trees. It was April 2009. The recession had hit their small town of Millridge hard. The auto shop where Michael worked had cut everyone's hours, and the bills kept piling up on the kitchen counter. These weekend trips to Greystone Forest had become Michael's only escape from the mounting pressure. Sarah, his wife, didn't understand his need for solitude, but she'd stopped arguing about it months ago. Wish you'd take your phone, Sarah said from the doorway, arms crossed against the morning chill. Her disapproval hung in the air between them. Michael gave her a tired smile as he tossed his duffel bag into the passenger seat of his blue 1987 Ford pickup. The truck was rusted around the edges but still ran like a dream, the benefit of being your own mechanic. No reception out there anyway, he replied, the same answer he always gave. It's just 2 days. I need to clear my head. Sarah's expression softened slightly. I know things have been tough. Just come back to us, okay? He couldn't have known then how those words would haunt her. Michael drove away that Friday morning while the dew still clung to the grass. Ethan stood in the driveway until the truck disappeared around the corner, the toy wooden replica clutched in his small hands. Greystone Forest sprawled across nearly 30,000 acres of protected wilderness about 40 minutes outside of Millridge. Unlike the manicured state parks nearby, Greystone was wild, remote, and largely untouched. Local hunters and serious backpackers knew its trails, but tourists generally avoided its dense underbrush and steep ravines in favor of more accessible woods. Michael loved it precisely because so few people ventured deep into its heart. He parked at his usual spot, a small clearing accessible by a dirt road that few knew about, and shouldered his pack. The familiar scent of pine and damp earth greeted him as he crossed the invisible boundary between civilization and wilderness. By midday Saturday, Michael had hiked several miles to his favorite camping spot near a small stream. He'd set up his tent, filtered water, and was enjoying the simple pleasure of a cup of instant coffee when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of an engine where no engine should be. Curiosity pulled him away from his campsite. He followed the noise, moving carefully through the underbrush until he spotted them, 2 heavy-duty trucks idling in a clearing he'd never seen before. 4 men were unloading large metal barrels from the back of one vehicle, while another man stood watch, a rifle slung across his chest. Michael froze. Something about the scene felt wrong, the furtive movements, the armed guard, the remote location. He stepped back slowly, but his boot snapped a fallen branch. The crack echoed through the trees. The man with the rifle turned sharply toward the sound. Michael ducked behind a thick pine, heart hammering against his ribs. He waited, barely breathing, until he heard the men resume their work. Then, with the careful movements of someone whose life might depend on silence, he began to retreat. But Michael Carter was a mechanic, not a spy. His knowledge of engines and transmissions hadn't prepared him for this moment. He didn't see the second guard positioned farther back in the trees until it was too late. "Hey!" The shout cut through the forest quiet. "We've got company!" Michael ran. He crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping his face as he sprinted back toward his campsite. Behind him, he could hear voices calling out, the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Michael knew these woods better than most, but fear made him clumsy. His foot caught on an exposed root, sending him tumbling down a steep embankment. Pain exploded in his ankle as he landed hard at the bottom of the ravine. Above him, he could hear the men searching, their voices carrying through the trees. "Find him! Nobody can know about this place!" Michael dragged himself beneath a fallen log, biting his lip to keep from crying out as his injured ankle throbbed. He lay there for what felt like hours as the search continued around him. Eventually, the voices faded, but he didn't dare move. Night fell. The forest grew cold. Michael's ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, and he knew he couldn't hike out, not tonight, maybe not tomorrow either. But he also knew he couldn't stay. Whatever those men were doing, they clearly didn't want witnesses. Using a sturdy branch as a makeshift crutch, Michael hobbled back to his campsite in the darkness. His hands shook as he gathered only the essentials: water bottle, first aid kit, energy bars, flashlight, and his small notebook. He couldn't carry his tent or sleeping bag, not in his condition. But there was one more thing he needed. From the bottom of his pack, Michael pulled out a small metallic case. Inside was an old digital camera, nothing fancy, just something he used occasionally to photograph interesting plants or wildlife. Today, it would serve a different purpose. He had to document what he'd seen, just in case. As the first hints of dawn colored the sky, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't go back the way he came. Those men might still be watching. He would have to find another way out of the forest. But first, he needed to get back to his truck. The journey that should have taken 3 hours stretched into an agonizing 8. Each step sent pain shooting up his leg, but the fear of what lay behind him pushed him forward. When he finally reached his blue Ford, the sun was already beginning its descent. Michael slumped against the driver's door, exhausted and feverish. His ankle had gone from painful to numb, a bad sign. As he fumbled for his keys, a distant engine sound made him freeze. They had found his campsite. They were looking for his vehicle now. With trembling hands, Michael started the truck. His mind raced as he considered his options. If these people were as dangerous as they seemed, going home could put Sarah and Ethan at risk. He couldn't lead them to his family. But disappearing wasn't a simple matter of driving away. People would look for him. Sarah would call the police. There would be search parties. Unless... A desperate plan began to form in Michael's mind. He knew these woods. He knew places where a vehicle could be hidden, places few would think to look. As the sound of engines grew closer, Michael made his choice. He would need to vanish. Not forever, just long enough to figure out what to do about what he'd witnessed. He would find a way to contact Sarah later, to explain everything. He eased the truck onto the dirt road, avoiding the main exit from the forest. There was another way out, a logging road that hadn't been used in years. It would take him on a roundabout route, but hopefully away from whoever was searching for him. Back in Millridge, Saturday night turned to Sunday, and Sarah's concern grew to worry. By Sunday evening, worry had blossomed into fear. Michael had never been late returning from his trips before. On Monday morning, she called the police. "My husband went camping in Greystone Forest on Friday. He was supposed to be home yesterday." The search began that afternoon. Teams with dogs combed the forest. Volunteers from town joined the effort. They found Michael's campsite, tent still standing, sleeping bag unrolled, coffee cup tipped over beside the cold fire pit. But of Michael and his blue Ford truck, there was no sign. Days stretched into a week. The search expanded, then contracted, then finally ended. Theories circulated through Millridge. Michael had fallen into a ravine the search teams had missed. He'd been attacked by a bear or mountain lion. He'd simply walked away from his life, driven by financial pressure and a faltering marriage. Sarah refused to believe the last one. "He wouldn't leave Ethan," she insisted to anyone who would listen. "Never. Something happened to him out there." But as weeks turned to months with no sign of Michael, even her certainty began to waver. For young Ethan, the loss was incomprehensible. Each night, he would sit by his bedroom window, the wooden toy truck clutched in his hands, watching the street for his father's return. "Dad promise," he would tell his mother, his voice small but certain. He crossed his heart. Sarah would gather him into her arms, her own tears falling into his hair. "I know, baby. I know. But promises, like people, sometimes disappear into the woods without a trace. The case of Michael Carter eventually went cold, filed away with other mysteries the world had no answers for. And somewhere in Greystone Forest, hidden from searching eyes, a blue Ford pickup truck held secrets that would remain buried for 15 long years. April 2024. 15 years to the month since Michael Carter had vanished into Greystone Forest. Ethan Carter wiped grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. The fluorescent lights of Pete's Quick Lube buzzed overhead, a constant companion to his thoughts. At 23, Ethan had his father's build and the same skilled hands, but none of his ambition. After dropping out of community college, he'd fallen into auto work, a job, not a career. "Carter! Phone!" Pete bellowed from the office. Ethan frowned. Nobody called him at work. His mother, now Sarah Winters after remarrying when Ethan was 12, texted when she needed him. And friends? Those had become scarce since he'd taken the night shift. "This is Ethan," he said, wedging the greasy shop phone between his ear and shoulder. "Mr. Carter, my name is Diana Lowell with Morris and Finch Law Associates." The woman's voice was crisp, professional. "I'm calling regarding a property matter that requires your attention." "Property? I don't own any property. According to our records, you are the son of Michael Carter?" Ethan's hand tightened on the receiver. His father's name was rarely spoken aloud these days. "Yeah, that's right. Mr. Carter, your father was listed as the owner of a tract of forest land in Greystone County. According to the original deed, ownership passes to his next of kin after 15 years of absence." Ethan leaned against the wall, pulse quickening. "My father owned land? That's impossible. We were barely making rent when he disappeared. The record shows the land was purchased 3 months before his disappearance. It's approximately 5 acres within Greystone Forest, accessible by a private road. Quite remote." Ethan's thoughts spun. His father had bought forest land without telling anyone. And now, 15 years to the month after he'd vanished, it legally belonged to Ethan. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "I understand this must be surprising," Diana replied. "We've prepared the paperwork. If you could come to our office." "I want to see it first," Ethan interrupted. "The land? Can you give me directions?" 2 days later, Ethan stood at the entrance to a narrow dirt road nearly hidden by overgrown brush. The directions had led him to a part of Greystone Forest he'd never visited during the countless hours he'd spent searching for his father as a teenager. The road looked unused for years, trees encroaching from both sides. Ethan parked his motorcycle and continued on foot, using his phone's GPS to navigate the coordinates the law firm had provided. After 20 minutes of hiking, the trees opened into a small clearing. Ethan stopped, his breath catching in his throat. There, partially sunken into the soft earth and covered with 15 years of forest growth, was the unmistakable shape of his father's blue Ford pickup. "Dad," Ethan whispered, the word foreign on his tongue. The truck had been deliberately hidden, branches and brush piled against it, now grown through with saplings and vines. Nature had been reclaiming it one season at a time. The windows were filmed with grime, the once blue paint faded to a dull gray-green that blended with the forest. Ethan approached slowly, as if the truck might disappear if he moved too quickly. His hands trembled as he pulled away vines and branches. The driver's door was locked. He moved to the passenger side, pulled harder on the handle, and it opened with a groan of rusted metal. The interior smelled of mold and decay, but remained largely intact. The seat fabric had rotted in places, small creatures had made nests in others. But on the dashboard, untouched by time, sat a small wooden toy truck, the one his father had carved for him. Ethan's knees weakened. He steadied himself against the door frame, eyes burning with unexpected tears. "You were here," he whispered. "You were here all along." For 15 years, he told himself his father had simply left, unable to handle the pressures of family life and financial hardship. It's what his mother had eventually come to believe. It's what everyone in town had whispered. Easier to think Michael Carter had abandoned them than to face the alternative, that something terrible had happened to him in these woods. But now, finding the truck deliberately hidden on land his father had secretly purchased. With shaking hands, Ethan reached for the glove compartment. It was locked, but the plastic was brittle with age. A firm pull broke the latch. Inside, protected in a plastic bag sealed with duct tape, was an envelope. Written across it in handwriting Ethan recognized from birthday cards long ago were the words, "For Ethan, you're old enough now." Ethan sank into the passenger seat, the weight of 15 years pressing down on him as he stared at the envelope. Whatever had happened to his father, whatever secrets these woods held, the answers were finally within reach. With a deep breath, he tore open the seal. The envelope contained 3 items: a folded piece of paper, a handwritten letter, and a small flash drive that looked surprisingly intact despite the years. With trembling fingers, Ethan unfolded the letter first. "Ethan, if you're reading this, then either I'm at peace or I've been gone so long that the land transfer clause kicked in. I never abandoned you, son. I need you to know that first. What happened in these woods 15 years ago forced me to make the hardest choice of my life. I stumbled onto something dangerous. People doing things they shouldn't in places they don't own. I've documented everything on the flash drive. I took pictures, recorded coordinates, collected evidence. I thought I could expose them safely, but they found out someone was watching. They came looking for me. I couldn't go home, couldn't risk leading them to you and your mom. So I hid the truck, hid myself, planned to lie low until I figured out what to do. But things got worse. These people have connections everywhere, police, etc. I didn't know who to trust. I bought this land 3 months before everything happened. Call it instinct or paranoia, but something told me I might need a safe place someday. I never told your mother. We were struggling financially, and I used money from my grandfather's old savings bonds. I'm sorry for the secrets. I've been watching over you from a distance all these years, making sure they never connected you to me. It wasn't the life I wanted, but it kept you safe. Now you're a man, and the choice of what to do with this information is yours. The flash drive contains everything. The map leads to more physical evidence I've kept hidden. Be careful who you trust with this, Ethan. These people are still out there. I love you more than you'll ever know. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved. Dad." Ethan read the letter 3 times, his father's voice alive in his head. Tears blurred his vision as 15 years of anger and abandonment transformed into something else. Grief, yes, but also understanding. And beneath it all, a burning question: was his father still alive? The second piece of paper was a hand-drawn map of the forest area. X marked a spot about 2 miles from where the truck was hidden, with detailed landmarks noted along a winding path. In the corner, precise GPS coordinates were written in his father's meticulous handwriting. Ethan pocketed both items and examined the flash drive. If it still worked after all these years in the truck, it might hold answers to questions he'd stopped asking long ago. Before leaving, Ethan searched the truck thoroughly. The cab was empty except for an old jacket wedged under the seat, his father's favorite, the one he always wore on his forest trips. Ethan pulled it out, dust and the scent of mildew rising from the fabric. He hugged it to his chest, a physical connection to the father he'd lost. Back at his apartment, Ethan plugged the flash drive into his laptop. To his surprise, it worked immediately, opening to reveal dozens of photo files and several text documents. The photos showed men unloading barrels from trucks deep in the forest. Ethan enlarged one image. The barrels were being buried in a remote clearing. Another sequence showed the same men opening crates, guns, stacks of documents with official-looking seals, and what appeared to be gold bars. One photo caught Ethan's breath, a close-up of a man supervising the operation. He wore an expensive suit despite the forest setting, his face captured in perfect clarity as he gave directions to the workers. Below the image, his father had typed a name, William Decker. 15 years ago, Decker had been a rising state leader. Now, he was a third-term U.S. statesman with rumored ambitions for higher office. The text files contained dates, times, license plate numbers, and detailed notes about movements and shipments. His father had been methodical, documenting everything with the precision of someone building an airtight case. The final file was titled simply, "Why?" Ethan opened it, finding a single paragraph. "I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But once I saw what they were doing, I couldn't unsee it. Smuggling contraband across borders, using protected wilderness as their cover. Leaders protecting criminals, criminals funding leaders. If I come forward now, it's my word against theirs, and they'll make me disappear for real. So I watch, I document, I wait. Someday, the right time will come. Someday, there will be enough evidence that they can't bury it all." Ethan closed his laptop, mind reeling. His father hadn't abandoned them. He'd been protecting them from a criminal network with connections in high places. A network still operating, still powerful, with one of its key players. Tomorrow, Ethan would follow the map to whatever his father had hidden in the forest. But tonight, he needed to process this new reality. His father might still be out there, watching from the shadows, waiting for the day when the truth could finally come to light. For the first time in 15 years, Ethan fell asleep with hope instead of resentment in his heart. Dawn painted Greystone Forest in hues of gold and amber as Ethan made his way deeper into the woods. The spring morning was cool, mist clinging to the forest floor like reluctant ghosts. He clutched his father's hand-drawn map, checking landmarks against the detailed notes. Third lightning struck pine on left, then due east 200 paces. His father's instructions were precise, military in their accuracy. Ethan wondered where Michael had learned such skills, certainly not at the auto shop in Millridge. After 2 hours of careful navigation, Ethan reached the spot marked with an X on the map. An ancient oak tree stood sentinel over a small clearing, its massive trunk split near the base, creating a natural hollow. Nothing about the area appeared disturbed or special. According to the map, the cache was buried 3 feet down, directly beneath the oak's longest branch when the sun was at noon. Ethan checked his watch, 11:43 a.m. Close enough. He'd brought a collapsible shovel from his motorcycle saddlebag. The ground was soft from recent rain, yielding easily to his determined digging. At 2 feet down, the shovel struck something solid with a dull thud. Ethan dropped to his knees, using his hands to clear away the remaining dirt. A steel box, roughly the size of a small suitcase, emerged from the earth. It was sealed with a combination lock, the metal surface remarkably preserved by whatever waterproofing his father had used before burial. The combination wasn't on the map. Ethan tried his birthday, no luck. His mother's, nothing. Then he remembered the wooden toy truck his father had carved for him. He'd always said it was made on Ethan's golden day. 0-8-0-1, August 1st, his birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside the steel box, wrapped in heavy-duty plastic, lay 3 items: a leather pouch, a waterproof binder full of documents, and a small handheld video camera with "Play Me" written on a piece of tape across its screen. Ethan opened the leather pouch first. It contained 24 gold coins, each in a plastic sleeve with documentation of authenticity. Even with his limited knowledge, Ethan knew they were worth a significant amount, enough to fund a new life if necessary. The binder contained ledgers, shipping manifests, and photographs, far more extensive than what was on the flash drive. Names were highlighted, arrows connected events and people, and his father's neat handwriting filled the margins with observations. Pages of official-looking documents bore the same seals Ethan had seen in the flash drive photos. Finally, he turned to the camera. The battery was dead, but his father had included a charger adapted to work with a portable battery pack. Ethan connected it, hands shaking slightly as he waited for enough charge to power the device. When the screen flickered to life, he pressed play. His father's face filled the small display, older than Ethan remembered, with gray threading his beard and deep lines around his eyes, but unmistakably Michael Carter. The timestamp showed the recording was made just 3 years ago. Ethan. His father's voice, heard for the first time in 15 years, made Ethan's heart stutter. If you're watching this, you've found everything. I don't have much time, so I'll be direct. Michael rubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion evident in every movement. What began as smuggling evolved into something bigger. Mr. Decker and his associates have been moving contraband across borders for years, weapons going out, gold and documents coming in. They're supplying separatist groups in exchange for mining rights in disputed territories. I've documented everything. He gestured to what appeared to be a small cabin interior behind him. I couldn't bring this to light without putting you in danger. These people eliminated 3 whistleblowers in 2011 alone. Made them disappear just like they tried to do with me. But I've been tracking them, gathering evidence, building a case too big to bury. Michael leaned closer to the camera, his eyes intense. I wanted to come back to you, son. Every day away has been torture. But the moment I resurfaced, they'd use you to get to me. I couldn't risk it. Not until I had enough to bring them all down. He paused, emotion breaking through his composed facade. But if you found this, maybe the time is right now. Decker is positioning himself for a run. The evidence in that binder connects him directly to illegal arms deals, money laundering, and conspiracy. The manifests prove everything. Michael's expression hardened with resolve. What you do with this is your choice. Walk away if you need to. I left you the gold for that reason. But if you decide to act, be smarter than I was. Don't try to fight them alone. Find someone you can trust, someone with resources they can't easily silence. He reached toward the camera, his hand seeming to stretch across time toward his son. I've missed watching you grow up. But I've seen you from a distance, the man you've become. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you, Ethan. The screen went black. Ethan sat motionless among the pine needles and soil, the weight of his father's trust heavy on his shoulders. The man he'd spent 15 years resenting for abandonment had sacrificed everything to protect him. And now, the decision was his: walk away with the gold and the knowledge that his father had never stopped loving him, or risk everything to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of people. Ethan looked up at the ancient oak that had guarded his father's secrets. Sunlight filtered through its leaves, dappling the forest floor with shifting patterns of light and shadow. He knew what he had to do. 3 days after finding the cache, Ethan sat in a corner booth of a bustling coffee shop 2 towns over from Millridge. The place was chosen for its anonymity, no connections to his life, no familiar faces. He'd spent those 3 days analyzing his options, weighing consequences, calculating risks. His father had survived by staying hidden. Ethan had no such luxury. His name was on property records now, a digital trail leading straight to him. Across the table sat Lena Dawson, an investigative journalist whose exposés on corruption had earned her both a Pulitzer and a reputation for fearlessness. More importantly, she had no connections to Millridge or Decker that Ethan could trace. You understand I get crazy conspiracy theories every week, Lena said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Her keen eyes hadn't left Ethan's face since he'd started talking. This isn't a conspiracy theory, Ethan replied, sliding a manila envelope across the table. It's evidence. Inside were copies of select documents and photos, enough to prove his claims without revealing everything. He'd spent hours at a copy shop making duplicates, then resealing the originals in waterproof containers hidden in 3 separate locations. Insurance, his father would have called it. Your father disappeared 15 years ago to gather evidence against William Decker, and you want me to believe he's been living as a ghost while one of his targets rose to become a powerful leader? Her skepticism was professional, not dismissive. I don't care what you believe about my father, Ethan said quietly. The evidence speaks for itself. Check the manifests against shipping records. Verify the signatures on the authorizations. The GPS coordinates are all there. Some sites may have been cleared, but not all of them. They got sloppy over the years. Confident. Lena opened the envelope, eyes widening slightly as she scanned the first document. If this is authentic. It is. And there's more, much more, if you can prove you're not on their payroll. She looked up sharply. That's not how journalism works. I don't prove myself to sources. It's how this works, Ethan said firmly. My father spent 15 years gathering this evidence. I'm not blowing his cover, or risking my life, without assurances. A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Lena nodded once. 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks to verify what's here. If it checks out, we talk again. Exactly 16 days later, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's real. All of it. Meeting tomorrow. Same place. 2 p.m. The next day, Lena arrived with her editor, Malcolm Reed, a granite-faced man whose reputation for journalistic integrity was legendary. For 2 hours, they discussed strategy, protection, publication. We'll need you to sign affidavits, Malcolm explained. And we'll want the original video for authentication. But your name stays out of it. We'll protect our source. What about my father? Ethan asked. Lena and Malcolm exchanged glances. If he's still alive, Malcolm said carefully, he should stay hidden until this breaks. Once it does, we'll have eyes on you. They'll be watching for any contact. That night, Ethan drove to his father's truck, still hidden in the forest. Under the seat where he'd found the jacket, he left a note. I'm finishing what you started. Stay safe. I'll find you when it's over. He didn't know if his father would ever see it, but it felt right, a message in a bottle cast into the past. For the next month, Ethan lived in a state of hypervigilance, jumping at shadows, checking his rearview mirror obsessively. He gave Reed's publication everything, the video, the ledgers, the gold coin as physical proof. They worked with international partners, building an investigative package no single entity could suppress. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the storm broke. Smuggling ring exposed. Screamed headlines across the country. 15-year conspiracy documented by missing witness. The story dominated every news cycle. The evidence was too comprehensive, the documentation too thorough to dismiss. Law enforcement agencies from 3 countries announced investigations within hours. Decker appeared on national television that evening, denying everything with the practiced indignation of a career leadership. But his eyes told a different story, the haunted look of a man watching his world collapse. 2 days later, federal agents raided properties across Greystone Forest, following GPS coordinates provided in the exposé. They recovered weapons caches exactly where the documentation indicated. Arrests began, sweeping up mid-level operators first, then reaching higher. Ethan watched it all unfold from the safety of a small apartment Reed had arranged, paid for in cash, registered under a false name. He'd taken a leave of absence from the auto shop, telling his boss he needed time to deal with family matters. Not entirely a lie. 1 week into the media frenzy, officers arrived at Ethan's apartment in Millridge with a warrant to search the premises. They towed his father's truck from the forest as evidence, officially linking Michael Carter's disappearance to the smuggling case. A detective called Ethan to inform him that his father's case had been reclassified from missing person to suspicious death under protection status, a bureaucratic term that neither confirmed nor denied Michael's survival, but acknowledged the circumstances of his disappearance. Your father, the detective said awkwardly, appears to have been a very brave man. Ethan just nodded, keeping his face carefully neutral. Have they located his remains? No. But after 15 years. The detective left the implication hanging. Ethan thanked him and ended the call, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. No body. No proof of death. Just the way his father would have planned it. The operation that had begun with a mechanic stumbling upon something he wasn't meant to see had collapsed under the weight of its own secrets. And somewhere out there, Ethan was certain, Michael Carter was watching it all unfold, perhaps finally ready to come home. Fall came to Greystone Forest, painting the trees in brilliant hues of crimson and gold. 3 months had passed since the story broke. Decker had resigned in disgrace, now facing federal indictments along with 14 others implicated in the smuggling operation. The investigation had expanded internationally, uncovering connections to arms dealers in 3 countries. Through it all, Ethan had kept a low profile. The media had eventually discovered his connection, the mysterious son of the vanished witness, but Malcolm Reed's legal team had kept reporters at bay. His brief statement, carefully crafted with their help, acknowledged only that he had discovered evidence of his father's investigation and chosen to bring it to light. On a crisp October morning, Ethan returned to the clearing where his father's truck had been hidden. The vehicle was gone now, taken as evidence, but the impression remained, a ghost shape in the forest floor where earth had molded around steel for 15 years. He carried a small wooden marker, lovingly carved from oak over the past week. Working the wood had connected him to his father somehow, the same hands creating something meaningful across generations. "I know you might be watching," Ethan said aloud to the empty forest as he knelt beside the truck's impression. "I don't expect you to show yourself. I understand why you can't." Wind whispered through the treetops, sending a shower of red and gold leaves spiraling down around him. "They tell me it could be years before all the cases are resolved. That some of these people might never face justice. But the truth is out there now. That's what matters." Ethan pressed the marker into the soft earth where the truck's driver's side door had once been, where his father had last stood on the property he'd secretly purchased for his son. The marker bore Michael's initials and beneath them, the words, "You didn't leave me. You protected me." Ethan stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "I'm going back to school in January. Engineering. Mom's proud. Tom, my stepdad, is helping with tuition." He smiled faintly. "He's not so bad, really. Been good to us." A rustle sounded from the trees beyond the clearing. Probably a deer or fox, but Ethan paused anyway, allowing the moment to stretch. "I don't blame you anymore," he continued, "for any of it. I understand the impossible choice you made. I would have done the same." The forest seemed to hold its breath. "They offered me witness protection. A new identity, new life somewhere else." Ethan shook his head. "I turned them down. I'm not running. Whatever comes next, I'll face it as Ethan Carter." He took a deep breath, blinking back unexpected tears. "I don't know if I'll come back here. Maybe someday. But I wanted you to know that I'm okay. Better than okay. For the first time in 15 years I feel whole." Ethan pulled his father's jacket from his backpack, the one he'd found in the truck, now carefully cleaned and repaired. He hung it from a low branch of a nearby tree, a tribute, a message, a goodbye. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything you sacrificed." As Ethan turned to leave, something caught his eye, a flash of metal among the fallen leaves near the edge of the clearing. He walked over and knelt, pushing aside the forest debris. A small tin box, recently placed, its surface still bright against the dark earth. Heart pounding, Ethan opened it. Inside lay a carved wooden figure, a man with a backpack, walking stick in hand. The craftsmanship was unmistakable, the same hands that had made his childhood truck. Beneath it was a folded note, the paper crisp and new. "Ethan, I am more proud of you than words can express. You've shown courage I could only hope to have instilled in you. The truth doesn't always bring justice, but it brings freedom, for both of us. I have to disappear again. There are still people who would use you to get to me. But know this, I have watched over you all these years, and I will continue to do so, even if from a greater distance. The gold coins are yours. Use them for your education, for a good life. Don't look for me, it isn't safe yet. Perhaps someday. You've become a man of integrity and strength. I couldn't ask for more. Until we meet again, Dad." Ethan clutched the wooden figure to his chest, tears flowing freely now. His father was alive. Had been here, perhaps even watched him leave the marker. Might even be watching now. He scanned the trees, searching for movement, for a glimpse of the ghost who had shaped his life from the shadows. The forest revealed nothing, but Ethan felt a presence nonetheless, a connection that transcended physical separation. Carefully placing the carved figure in his pocket, Ethan walked away from the clearing, shoulders straight, steps steady. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. Whatever path his life took now, he would walk it knowing the truth, not just about the corruption his father had exposed, but about love that had never wavered, even when tested by impossible choices. Behind him, wind stirred the forest, lifting his father's jacket momentarily as if waving goodbye. Then stillness returned, and Greystone Forest kept its secrets once more. Michael Carter hadn't vanished for nothing. And thanks to his son, the truth had finally come out. The forest was quiet again. The story was over.